All right, welcome to episode 53 of the More Doors podcast. We've got an excellent in-studio guest today, so we know we're going to get a lot of cool clips from this one chopped up for Soch. We're going to get started right now. All right, welcome back. Episode 53. Thanks for joining us on the More Doors podcast. We've got a great guest today, and we're super excited to have him in studio and dive in. But first, we've got to thank the people that make this happen. So check out deepbluere.com. That's the home of Deep Blue Capital. Jump on over there, create your investor profile, get on our newsletter, check out our upcoming investment opportunities, our educational content, all the great stuff over there. And then head on over to Tore Studios, Tore Studios.com for all your multimedia, podcast, YouTube, video content needs. Jesse will hook you up. He'll do that thing where he's adjusting the knobs in the background on the board while the show's going, even though we're not sure if that actually does anything. But we think we look and sound pretty cool. So check out ToreStudios.com. All right. Today's guest, we're excited to have him actually in studio. I get really excited when we have guests in studio. I think the conversations are way more fluid and constructive. Welcome, Mr. Eddie Austin, the VP of Operations over at Hampshire Capital. Thank you for joining us today, brother, and taking up Bachowski's seat.
Thank you.
We didn't even mention he's not here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was one guy that gave up a seat, right?
Yes, exactly. We told him to stay home today so we could have you in the studio, man. Welcome, brother. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. Watched some episodes, been a part of your guys' show a little bit, and I love what you do. Looking forward to today's episode.
I appreciate it, man. So, like I said before, I never really do anybody's bio for them, and we don't got to go super, super deep, but at least give us the 30-second elevator pitch on who is Eddie, a little bit about the organization, kind of give us a little background so we can dive in.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, I'm a serial entrepreneur, very dynamic background, real estate, business, everything to do with helping other people. My passion is just trying to make the most amount of money in the shortest period of time so I can help a lot of people, turn around and teach those people. I strive to do the impossible every single day just to prove that somebody else can do it.
Love that, man. Absolutely. And very similar, one of the things that I love doing about this show love about doing this show is we have so many people on here and we get to talk with so many people, and the idea of helping others with what we do is a theme that we come back to a lot. And I don't think it's bullshit either. I truly believe, because you know this and we know this better than anybody, this business is very thankless in a lot of ways. It's not like you just get into real estate and all of a sudden you're worth $100 million.
No, not a bit.
So you got to have a real passion for it, and you've got to have a passion for helping others on their journeys, whether it's the tenants in the communities that you're managing, whether it is your partners on the vertical companies, whatever it is. This is a thankless industry in a lot of different ways. So dive in a little bit more on how, your journey as far as what does it look like from a day-to-day to, I've scaled your operations to where they are, and kind of the meaning behind that for you with your partners and helping others on their journey. Just give us kind of what all that means to you a little bit.
Right. I mean, on the top side, coming down, we're leveraging capital to improve communities. And, there's a lot to that. There's buying the property, rebranding it, giving it a facelift, giving the community something nicer to look at, and getting tenants excited to come in. I look at business and real estate almost like a marriage, right back together, because it's essentially the same thing. You've got tenants, which are your customers. You've got employees, you've got a business reputation in the public eye, and you've got to take care of all these people, and you got to do it well. So, nurturing people that come through the door, you've got to make sure that your reputation stays up. If they've got a concern in their apartment complex, they need taken care of. They got their air conditioning out, you got to take care of that. So your team, your resources, everybody has to be able to work towards the same dream. And from running, years of supervising people and leading people, need to understand the why. Like, why are we doing this? And then they start to get a little bit of an understanding that why it's so important that we take care of work orders in time, why it's important that we cut the grass and make it look nice, because you need to look at it as, would you be proud that your grandmother would live there? Yeah. Would you let your family live there? And if you do that, it's very easy to do business and continue to scale your business because you're doing the right things for every single person. It's not transactions. It's all about relationships.
100%. And how that shows up in practice, we were talking even before the show about this a little bit. You guys are on a much larger scale, and we're closer to the beginning of our journey. Although you're far from done with your journey,
as we talked about
before as well. But one of the ways that shows up practically is the verticals in the business, right?
Right.
Now you actually run the verticals very similar to one of our previous guests. I think we just had on the show last week, where they're also front facing as well. They serve more clients than just your operation,
right?
And so they're more like partner companies,
right?
We've done something very similar on our property management and home maintenance and construction side as well. Mm-hmm. The reason I say that is because I've come to find exactly what you're talking about in the why behind what we do. We make money off of our home maintenance and construction company. There's no doubt about it. We're profitable. It's a great business. We really love running it. But the reality is we started that brand because we saw a massive hole in our operations, and we needed a way to fill it. Mm-hmm. The hole was we were managing a lot of properties, and we were not good at the maintenance side. The maintenance side consisted of us piecing together a whole bunch of contractors on the fly to do stuff as quickly as we could get them out there, which was very unreliable. We were not creating enough opportunity for them to create consistency in our world. We were getting shoddy work done. There was very little quality control. And at the end of the day, we had unhappy tenants with places living in places that my grandma wouldn't live there.
Yeah.
Owners we were a fiduciary to protecting their asset, that I don't feel like we were holding up the quality that we could possibly be. And so we did the work. We went out and said, this is obviously a gap. How do we turn that gap into a partnership and an opportunity? Mm-hmm. And so we brought on a managing partner. We brought on the crews. We built the infrastructure. And yes, we make a profit off it. But you know what? Our tenants, the second a work order comes in and gets approved, somebody's out there same day, every single time. And we have standards around how our work needs to look. We have standards around how well our properties need to be kept. And our owners, rather than getting hit with, they get a property turned back over to them that now needs $20,000-$30,000 worth of work because nobody was out there doing maintenance for the last year the lease was going on. Now they have a home that they're getting back in the same condition that they gave it to us in.
Right.
And so everybody's happy, and we're making a profit, and we feel like we're genuinely doing something good for the community.
Right. 100%. To back up a minute, very beginning of your conversation there, so many people want to scale. They truly do. But they forget really two things that make a business very scalable. Number one, everybody wants to multitask doing 25 things. They want to own 15 businesses that are not in the same silo, not in the same vertical. And they completely stump their growth. There's zero economies of scale when you do that. Everything, you don't want to, you want to own it. You want to control it. And then you want to control the controllables. And then the second thing is everybody fails the systems and processes. If there's no standard, what are you abiding to? I mean, how do you know if you're doing a good job? Do you have a checklist? Does it meet what you're asking them to do? Is the quality of work there? What's your quality checks? It seems like everybody forgets that because everybody wants to go out here and we're chasing one thing, right? Like we're chasing all this money that we're trying to chase. Maybe it's a private jet. Maybe it's to help 100 people. Maybe it's 1 million people. We're all chasing this one thing. And for me, I've really focused on letting go of pride and ego to owning all these businesses and say, yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I remember owning 8 companies at one time. It was miserable for a while. And then when I turned around and focused on one company, and then I had the second company, but it's all in the same vertical alignment, like it all started to come together. And then I also like to back away from a company as well and let it run to see where it fails at. And at that point, I can see what systems are missing, and I can come back in and create these systems. And at that point, the company runs smooth again. So you kind of do a pull out and a health check.
100%. You're definitely speaking to some things that I think hit hard, hit home very hard with a lot of our listeners, especially the idea of, in this day and age, especially we are so inundated with the idea of opportunity all day, every day, that it's so hard not to run in a million different directions, right?
Yeah. And the biggest part that gets us to do that, in my opinion, is that we live in this microwave society. Everybody wants the instant success. Yeah. We compare
Just
ourselves.
10x it, bro.
Yeah, but everybody wants to build a business, put it in the microwave, and 30 seconds later, sometimes it takes 30 years. You're comparing yourself to a Blackstone, a BlackRock, and they've been doing this 40, 50, 60 years. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to build your company, I'm trying to build my company. It takes time. Mm-hmm. The things we do have on our side, though, is we have technology that they didn't have when they started. It's just like I tell, the younger generation, they're like, man, I don't understand how you fix cars and you weld and you do all these other things. And, man, you guys got it easy. I physically had to have some old guy in overalls teach me how to weld or how to turn wrenches on certain things. Yeah. Today, you could literally get on YouTube University. And you could put your phone right here and you could tear an engine down step by step by step, right? And if you don't like that video or you don't like the host, you don't like the way his studio looks, you just pop up another video.
Yeah. It'll just be there in the related on the side for you.
Absolutely, yeah. The algorithm just catches on. Mm-hmm. But, everybody today, they're like, they want to build this business. And the first part of, 2-3 years of a business, it's hard. Yeah. You got to chew rocks. You got to have some grit. Yep. And they just give up. Yep. Next year it could be a totally different story.
Exactly. And to that end, that's why, your organization has been successful. And I even in my personal world, am trying to get a little bit better at this. If you're going to have multiple streams and multiple ventures, they need to complement one another. They need to be verticals of one another. Doing too many things that are in different silos, it's like working part-time on several different, it's like working part-time at several different jobs and then wondering why you never get promoted, why these companies never get off the ground, because you're spending an hour a day trying to build something over here that doesn't talk to something over here, because you see both of these as opportunities. It's really difficult, especially when you see opportunity in different areas. It's difficult to start saying no to things, but it's one of the most valuable things that you can do. I've had to learn this lesson the hard way a million times, and I haven't even totally learned it yet. Right. But give us your kind of mindset on that.
Oh man, internet experts always speak. You get rich from multiple streams of income. That's so not true. It's a total myth. When it comes down to it, multiple streams of income is what entrepreneurs do that are extremely successful in a business that they created, or they made a lot of money from a tech job or from other things that they were very good at, and it made them a lot of money. And at that point, they diversified into things that gave them multiple streams of passive income, things they don't have to work for. There's only 24 hours in a day. So if you're going to work on 15 different adventures that make you $100 each, you made $1,500. That's cool. Yeah. How can you make $135,000 in 1 year? Yeah. And you're not going to be able to just physically work on every single hour. It takes people. Yep. So, everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to get rich through multiple streams of income. It's a hard life. I'm just going to tell you. Yeah. I have really world experience in it. A lot of people think, oh man, he's a multimillionaire because of real estate. Real estate's been a tax shelter for me. It's I made a lot of money through my business opportunities that were very successful that I managed every single day, and that was the only thing I was managing. Yeah. I wasn't managing these 15 other distractions. Yep. I was saying no. Still to this day, I get calls from people all the time, and everybody that's ever seen me at a conference, they've never heard me say, and I would actually pay somebody $100 if I had said this, and they actually have it recorded. I've never said, bring me a deal and I'll sponsor it for you. I don't do that, because to me it's a distraction. I trust my partners. I trust our systems and processes. We've got our own company, and everybody is in vertical alignment. We know exactly the keyhole we're looking for. Yep. So when somebody brings me a deal with halfway underwriting or don't have near the experience, yeah, I want to help people. But I know that if I said yes to everything that came at me, I'm not going to be any good to them. Yeah. You got to learn to say no. You got to put a hand up and say, no, absolutely not. Yep. I'm a huge guy on time blocking. Like, I read my emails once a day. And if you emailed me past that time, you'll get a reply the next day. Yep. But I do that so people have an attention span. So when I'm in this podcast, I'm not answering my phone. I'm not doing anything else. Like, this is my time to give you all the attention.
So, and you bring up a good point. A podcast that Brian and I listen to brings up the point about, and it's about building wealth through passive income.
Right.
Right. It's called Wealth Without Wall Street. Great show.
Yeah.
And the hosts are really, they're really educational. But one point they really bring up is passive. What is passive income for you is active income for somebody else. 100%. And you've learned that now, because at one point you said you had all these businesses.
Yeah.
Take us through the journey that Eddie, the young Eddie to today's Eddie, where
who's still young.
Who's still young? Yes, absolutely.
41.
We're all young, all right? Because I'm 41. That's good.
Yeah.
Take us through that journey of how did you seek out mentorship? Did you get into coaching? Like, take us on that educational journey, and obviously there's probably some street smarts in there as well.
All right. This is going to be a good ride. So, I want to start by saying what you read on Facebook, Instagram, and all these things, the truth doesn't sell. The truth doesn't convert. So they want to attract you with this multiple stream of income model because you're going to click on it, you're going to watch the video, you're going to engage with that audience and drive their algorithm. Yeah. So nobody speaks the truth on, well, you got to start and be really good at one thing, like the one thing that makes you the most money. Yep. So, the younger me, 100%, man. Like, I was working for a factory and learning good systems and processes, how to implement and understanding corporate structure from a very high level, being poured a lot of money into me and mentorship and being coached and taught and everything in between. And from that point, when I went out and started my first business, right away, I had all these distractions that come at me. And this business starts to become profitable. And at that point, people are like, hey, can you do this job? Like, yeah, I have welders in my shop, but I'm a diesel shop.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can weld this together for you. And before you know it, you're an expert. Well, you're not an expert, but you're doing 15 jobs in the same shop. And I really cut myself down because how profitable could I have been if we only did mechanic work on this specific vehicle? And that's just it. Yep. And then I started to really learn. And then from that point, I was doing that in the afternoon. And through my welding business, I got to build a very large sculpture for, at the time, I didn't know, a very successful man had contacted me and said, hey, I want you to take over on this project and to finish this thing out. And he owned and operated hotels all around the United States. And he ended up being my mentor. And man, the one question that left me thinking a 45-minute ride home completely lost was, he asked me the question, Eddie, what would you be capable of if you didn't have a job? And at that point, you've looked in the mirror, you've drove down the road, maybe even possible today, what would it look like if we didn't have a job? Yeah. So a lot of the times we build these businesses, or we left the day job, or we built this business in the afternoon, but what we did was we built ourselves another job. Everybody's like, oh, I'm the CEO. You're the only person in the LLC, man. Yeah. Like, a CEO.
You're also the secretary.
Right. So I understand that you feel important by that, but that's pride and ego. Like, ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. And the guy that I heard that from is Rick Risby. And it's so true, because that anesthesia is that numbing feeling that we need to be the CEO, we need to be doing all these jobs, but what you really need to do is have talent, enough talent that you can attract people that can work underneath you, so you can scale your business, and singly focus on that. Yep. Because my biggest downfall was pointing at this mountain and climbing this mountain and realizing when I turn around and look at the path of destruction, wow, I wish I hadn't done that. Because I did all these other things. I never singly focused. And I really limited myself. And it was a tremendous amount of learning. And I will admit that learning come from having that mentor, investing in education, I read 25 to 30 books a year, whether that's audio books or physical books. And I am a constant. I have it set on my calendar that I educate for 30 minutes, whether that's a podcast, whether that's an educational book, a mindset book. Like, I am big on that every single day. And I've looked back to my best years and my worst year. You want to take a guess on how many books I read on my worst year? One.
Still want it.
My best year was 25.
Sure.
And this year I'm doing 30. So I know where I'm trying to go, and it takes education to get there. Yep. So you have to be this constant as an educator, right? There's no one theory that you can apply that's going to work for you or work for you. Like, you have to find that one mentor that resonates, and that guy that does that teaching, and then bring in a mix. You need a mentor. Yep. Like, I sell mentorship programs. Not that I'm here to promote anything I'm doing. I don't want you to think that. But I've had people come to me that said, man, I would love to do what you do. I would love to be half as successful, but they won't make the investment. They're like, maybe it's 25 grand, maybe it's 10 grand, maybe it's $5,000. And they're like, I don't understand how you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on probably over $1 million on mentorship and stuff like that. And they're like, I want to be where you're at. Well, they're like, what does it cost? What's it cost? Well, I look at what's it cost is, what does it cost you if you don't make the investment? If you don't make the investment, everything you thought you could make, there's no ROI in that. The only way to get ROI is you have to make the investment.
Do you feel, and I do this at times, that it's not the cost that's actually stopping them. It's the mindset that they have of themselves that they're going to spend this money and not actually take the action. So
Right.
why they're just going to use the upfront excuse of not being able to afford it, or they don't want to spend it because they already know behind it that there's going to be hard work that comes with it, and they don't want to do that work.
It's true. And really, I think the philosophy is it's all about the believer in the battle. So, you're probably signing up for mentorship or education because of a pain point in your life. Like, you're going through probably a personal or psychological battle or mental battle in your mind, or maybe a battle with your finances. Like, maybe you got some hardship that's coming up in the next 6 months, and you're looking towards this coaching program, this mentorship, and that's a battle coming. And oftentimes, in my opinion, every battle that we lose is because we didn't believe in ourselves.
It's a really good point. Both of those thoughts, I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? I think so much of one of my mentors a long time ago, there's been several asked the same question, right? Like, what would you do if you know you wouldn't fail? If I knew that I was going to get the return of this investment,
right,
I would make it every single time, even if it was my last dollar.
Right.
But if you go into it with the mindset of there's going to be work behind this, and I don't trust that I'm going to go do that work, you've already lost, right? And so there's such a mental component to it as well. I want to dovetail back just to the point that you were making before when we talk about focusing on what you do well and then being great at it. The one addition to that conversation, which you've realized in your operation, your business as well, is it actually turns out if you're trying to build multiple streams of income and revenue over time, the best way to do that actually is focusing on the thing that you do best. Because when you try to take on every opportunity all at once, you're going to spread yourself thin. You're not going to do any of them well. What we found, and I think what you found in your business, is when you start to build one business and you get really good at it, what you start to see are opportunities to grow for the things that you're not doing well or the things that you're missing in your business, right?
Right.
When we first started our management company, we scaled it to a point where we realized we suck at this part right here.
Right.
And we're not the people to go fix this. What we can do is make an investment in a partner, somebody who specializes just in this. Mm-hmm. And now we have a company that goes and runs this aspect of things. If we had just started to start a maintenance and construction company at the same time we started the management company, they would have both failed.
They would have failed.
Immediately.
Yeah. Right.
So what it turns out is when you get vision on what you do well, you start to see your gaps.
Right.
And that's where you actually start to, over time, build those multiple streams, build those partnerships, and then you build an entire community of businesses, but you didn't try to do it all at once.
Right. There's two things, and I'll keep it short. Number one, how did you figure out you're not good at that?
A lot of unhappy tenants at one time.
I would answer it as you failed.
Yes, great way.
So
yeah.
Everybody wants to be a perfect track record of winning. Well, you don't learn anything from winning. I'm sorry, not in my opinion. You learn from failing.
Yep.
So I've never been afraid of failure. I welcome it, to be honest. I want to go out and fail fast so I learn from it, and then I can turn around and apply it again, because that's the point you win. And at that point it's a bunch of failures that you've figured out that you win one big time. So say you lost $100,000 in this investment, $50,000 in this investment, but you made $1 million in this one. So what?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's afraid to fail. They're like, be vulnerable. Yeah. Tell the truth. Say what it is. Yeah. And everybody don't want to do that. They're like, oh man, I don't want to fail. Yeah. Like, freaking get over it, man. Rip off the Band-Aid.
And that's huge. And as you're tuning in and listening to this, obviously you're joining the More Doors podcast to figure out how to probably acquire more doors and invest. And what I think this is probably a good pattern interrupt to your learning of this as you're consuming this podcast or watching the video, to understanding that first and foremost, why do you want to get more doors? Right. And you and I were talking before the show started about, the hustle or the chase. And originally, like when I was in my younger 20s, my hustle and chase was to have private jet money. And then as I get older, I just realized private jets crash more than the.
That's scary.
Which is interesting, because that's not gonna delay my flights.
Yeah, right. So like I look at that, and I'm like, all right, I don't really want that, and I have a different goal, and a lot of it, I won't just share here, but it's yours was to more philanthropic.
Right.
And as we're in this hustle mode, since my early 20s through even 41, I'm still in that mindset of hustling every single day. Right. So I don't feel like I've arrived yet, where other people would be like, how much more do you need?
Yeah.
Right. So it's this battle and this mindset of what are we actually chasing, and how do we view ourselves? And then understanding that, you mentioned this earlier, that this is not going to make you rich.
No, it's not.
Right. So that this is a business that we're operating, and if you're not good at operating the business, why do you think that you're going to be good at this part? And then if you're not good at running your main business, why are you going to go get a side business?
Well, I guess I would back up and I would retract that statement that no, it's not. What's your definition of rich? At the end of the day, my definition of rich and yours, all of us are probably grossly different.
Right.
It's probably hundreds of millions of dollars different. I'm striving to be $1 trillion net worth guy. Whew. So at that point, I've got to be really focused.
Yeah.
Because I'm striving health-wise to live to 120. I'm extending my time beyond, what the perfect life expectancy would be. But I also say to that, I think the biggest thing is you got to find what you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, like I was on a podcast here the other day, somebody said, if I gave you $25 million, would you wake up tomorrow and do the same thing you're doing today? And the answer is yes. And I said, yeah, I would love that. And they said, well, what would you do different? I said, I would take that and 2x the money is what I would do with it. I'd have 50. And I still would do exactly what I'm doing every day, because what I found is I love the journey.
Yeah.
Like, it's the journey of what you're doing. Like, if you enjoy acquiring more doors, then do it. But if it kind of sucks to you, or it's a thorn in the side, you're not going to get many doors. You're subconsciously limited to that because you don't want more problems.
Yep.
And a lot of people, if they don't have the right team and they don't have the right, the ecosystem built out, acquiring more doors is going to bring more problems.
Yep.
And it's just like money amplifies. If you're a bad person, when you become rich, you're going to be a worse person.
Yeah.
If you're a good person, it's going to amplify who you are.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing, is I always say, man, find what you're passionate about and just focus on that and enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
How many people do you believe that if you ask that question, if I give you $25 million, would you continue doing what you're doing today? How many do you think that would answer yes, that they would continue onto their whatever journey that they're on currently would say yes to that?
I think 98% would just say, I'm not going to work today.
I wouldn't do
Yes.
anything.
I think 98% would say, I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to buy a beach house. And that's the thing is, I hate to say this, but most people would take that money and buy more liabilities.
Yeah.
You know, my answer to that question, if you gave me $25 million, awesome. I'm going to go make 2X that. You know, I'm going to go put it in that's the thing. If you gave me $25 million, I'm going to limit my tax liability. I'm going to go invest that thing in a vehicle that gives me my time and money back. I don't want it.
Yep.
You know, that's what I've become an expert at is if you give me $100,000 right now and my wife or daughter's seen that happen and they say, hey, can I have $10 for a soda? I don't have any money. You know, I'm broke.
Yeah.
Every single day I'm broke.
Yep.
Because when I get money, I get rid of money.
Yep.
I don't want to keep it. What am I collecting it for something?
Yeah.
You know.
It's a really, really good mindset. And even just to backtrack a little on what you were saying before, you know, it's a fine line sometimes to figure out if it's what you're passionate about outside of the money aspect. Are you doing this for money? Or are you doing it because you're passionate about it? And then where are your gaps, right? That is not in any way to say that even things that you're passionate about don't suck doing sometimes, right? Like what we do is still really, really hard work.
Right.
And it's not always fun. I kind of want to where I want to take that is, you know, what is your mindset around understanding, and this is a little bit more existential. A lot of people just get into a certain business because they think it can make them a lot of money. And then you hit the nail on the head. If you're doing something that you genuinely do not like doing just to make money, you're not going to make very much money doing it.
You're not.
Right? There are businesses that I could make a fortune. Anybody could.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do them because they're not anything that I would want to do. I'm not passionate about it. I don't want to start those businesses. But there's a whole demographic of people that get into certain businesses, real estate specifically, because they think that's the way to build a lot of wealth. But if it's not something that you would do because you genuinely enjoy building those businesses, you're probably not going to create very much wealth at it. How do you balance understanding whether, you know, how do you know that this is what you're passionate about, I guess is a good question, on the days where it doesn't feel like it's very much fun?
I think I got a good answer to that question. And it come down to understanding when I got goosebumps and chills. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm chasing. Like, what can I do that gives me goosebumps and chills more frequently? And I usually get that when I help other people. Yeah. Like when somebody comes to me with a business problem, a real estate problem, or they're just stuck, whether it's just mindset, all kinds of things. And they came to me and they said, Eddie, I don't know how to do this. I don't understand what I'm doing here. I need some help figuring it out. And what I realized is when I do that, or I went to a certain conference or I went to a certain place, not to get spiritual, but I've had certain people that walked up to me that said, I prayed that I would meet somebody that would totally make this worth it for me because I just put everything that I had left on a credit card to get here. And after this conversation with you, you're that guy. Wow. And that's when the hair stands up and you get the goosebumps. And that's where I like to be, is in those rooms. Yeah. I like to be in that place that I can help people. So that means that I have to withstand that temporary pain. So when that time when it does suck, right? And it's hard. You know, this is just a tough season of business. I actually welcome that. Yeah. Maybe I'm one of those individuals that's just wired differently, but I like the hard. If it's easy, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on. You know, I like it. I like the chaos. I like everything like that. But I have a calming sense when people come to me that work for me or other people that are in the same business and are like, I don't understand how you're so calm right now. Yeah. Because you have to be. Yep. And that point, there's like, man, you just sitting next to you helps me.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel good.
When you have the right mindset around why you do what you do, it's much easier to control the chaos mentally.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And there's an acceptance around that. You hit the nail on the head. Businesses that don't have some form of controlled chaos get really boring really fast.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I don't want to be a part of it.
Working at an accounting firm seems really boring to me.
You know,
hopefully those aren't chaotic. I hope we know what we're doing around there.
It's kind of funny because between me and my partners, you know, we all got our respected silos that we're in and everything. And anytime there's something completely chaotic, something completely sideways, I'm that takeover specialist. I'm that guy that comes in and just fixes it. And that's ever since I was a young kid. That's what I want to strive to do, is just fix things.
Yeah.
And, whether it was turning wrenches on a car to, fixing a broken scaffold wagon or something, it was fixing things. And then as I got older, as I matured in my education, I learned that I could fix things in everyday life. Yeah. And I could fix things in business. So I love it when there's completely a business going almost bankrupt, and I come in and just like a John Taffer, just save it, right? Yeah. And just turn it around.
How long can you stay in that mental state though? Like, there's people that are good at it. That's kind of unfortunately my God-given gift as well, but I can't stay in it for very long because it drains me to the point where, I have to take that break. What about for you?
I've definitely noticed that I have a extreme pain tolerance, so I can outlast most of the situations, but I am also a sprinter. I am, I used to be a competitive powerlifter, and it's not about the how long, because every time you're in the battle, you continue to get worn down. So I've realized that, I'm probably a 3 to 6 month to 9 month guy. And then at that point, I'm getting bored. But I've also realized that if I haven't fixed it at that point, that I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Meaning that I should have came in harder, discovering the problems, writing the systems and processes, training the people, and I'm out. And then I need to come back in a month or two and check it. Right. Because if I'm staying there more than 9 months, I'm not performing as a person. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that to go right with your passion is you're a sprinter. At the end of the day, you can sprint really well for a short period of time.
Yep.
But what you have to do is make sure that every single step that you're taking is with intention.
Yeah, and putting the right people in the right seats.
Exactly. Butts in the right seats is the best place to be.
And fixing, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like fixing the same problem over and over is what's draining, right?
Yeah.
As you progress, as you get out of your silo and you go be the guy that comes in and fixes something, well, that's also going to incite growth in the company.
Right.
It's going to incite opportunity, and with opportunity comes some other way to keep the train on the tracks.
Right.
Where people get bogged down and maybe they self-discover that they might not be the right person for that role or that opportunity is. If you're continuing to fix the same thing over and over, you're not partnering with the right people, or you're probably not the right person to fix that problem.
Right.
And that's probably the most draining aspect of being in any business, is when it perpetually you're doing the same thing over and over and you feel the chaos.
It's the definition of insanity.
It really is.
If you're doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result, come on.
It's the truth. It's, I won't speak directly to this. We have a lot of people that listen to the show, and if I'm not vague enough, they might know exactly which business I'm talking about. There are some businesses that we run where the revenue driver is also what I consider almost to be an unfixable problem. It is people taking the right actions over and over. And if they don't take those actions, which they're not forced to, it doesn't drive revenue. And so you feel like you're in this perpetual state of trying to get people to do things they already know they should be doing. That business is exhausting.
There's probably another podcast for this, but, I'm big on this. Everybody that creates their first business, that's their firstborn.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sell it. And they just keep grinding on it and just trying to figure out how they can make this thing work. And I'm going to be honest, the rocket fuel to business and scalability is to exit the first one and maybe close the first one, and then sell the second one for probably exactly what you got invested in it. And that third business, you take that third business when you sell that one and you invest it in business number 4. How smart are you then? And you have marketing dollars.
And you have people that can.
You have people that can build websites. You got to build your first website when you build your first company.
Yeah.
Most of the time, or you got to get a friend to do it, and you're doing it on the kitchen table. But when you can physically pay for professional services because you have the money, because you exited business number 4, that's where it really becomes real. And it becomes fun.
100%, right?
But-
You're describing, essentially describing almost parlaying your opportunities into your own verticals, right?
Right.
Like how much easier is to build the next company when you've got revenue from the first company coming in? You're talking about doing that in stages. I agree 100%. And a lot of times, I've heard this before as well, in the sense that a lot of times your first business also becomes your first prison.
Yes.
That, going back to what I said a minute ago, you're a CEO, you're the employee of the company. You're the guy licking and sticking letters. You're the guy that's putting shipping labels on.
Yeah.
You're taking it to UPS. You're doing everything. Mm-hmm. You're not, you may own a business, but that's your own W-2.
Yep. 100%. And you might not even be smart enough to W-2 yourself. You might be 1099 on yourself and paying self-employment tax.
Very possible. Very possible.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This is such great advice because it's something that I even need to hear over and over again. Is the path you just laid out is so true, and I think that it can be very difficult, especially in businesses that once did really well, but you've either lost passion for, you've moved on. Or are those businesses, are they capable of still doing well, but you've got to continue to pour your heart and soul to them, and you're not going to realize the opportunities to do the things that you really want to do and continue to grow and continue to expand until you realize that that business is no longer viable if you want to get to where you're trying to go.
Well, a lot of people build lifestyle companies. Lifestyle meaning if I continue, I had a dream to have so much income, and I built this business, and it provides a lifestyle for me. It makes me $130,000 a year, and that's all I need to live. But it takes you 60, 70, 80 hours to have this lifestyle. I mean, you could probably go get a very high-paying job that pays you six figures plus, not going to be after taxes, and you can have the same lifestyle, and you don't have all the problems with people calling you, your customers calling you after hours.
Right.
And everybody's afraid to sell that lifestyle business. Everybody's afraid of letting go.
Yep.
And I mean, just like real estate, what's the number one thing, Nick, that every time somebody has a problem with turning loose of a property or it's way overpriced? What is that?
What's the problem?
Yeah, what is normally the problem when somebody wants a certain number for their house? Like emotional attachment.
Their emotional attachment, or
It's
they
the
need
emotional
they need that money to sell, but almost always emotional attachment.
Right. It's
Typically,
emotional
yeah.
attachment. You have to detach yourself from that.
Yep.
It's a business.
Yep.
Yeah. Or they pictured something in mind that they're needing to go spend it on. They've already spent that money.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
on something that's not real yet. So, no, that it's all a head game, and that's something that Brian and I, we're constantly learning as him and I are pretty much partnered in almost every business that we own except for one. And that's the number one goal, is to say, all right, how do we not make sure that we're building our own prison cell that we can't escape from?
Yeah.
Right.
It has to be scalable. And that's something that, I always say that one of Brian's, gifts and flaws is Brian takes it all on and does all the work. And I was like, dude, you can't do that anymore.
No.
You can't be the website builder and the email creator and the marketing guy and the systems guy. Like, we have enough money to hire that out. And, but, when you're still in that hustle mode, you're wanting to stay lean and mean.
Right.
And at what point do does that mindset change in a business? And we see that in how investors run their show, when they're buying single family rentals or trying to go into the multifamily side, is that they're still the ones fixing the toilets. They're still the one doing the turns, while it may take them, 6 to 8 weeks but they're saving, right? They're saving thousands of dollars, but they're not realizing that the longer that their property is off the market, it's costing them much more in it. So if you could go back in time, right, learning from your experience now, let's look at your at 41 years old. If there was one lesson that you've learned that you wish you knew when you started any of your businesses, what would that one thing be?
I think the one thing for me would be the understanding of diminishing returns. So when you're building a business, when you're investing in things, it comes a point where you can invest so much that you can actually diminish your profit margins. So I'll bring this into color or into focus. So if you own and operate a business that's got service trucks and stuff like that, and you have an uneducated or a CPA that doesn't really speak to what you do. Maybe he doesn't understand the big picture. He doesn't have the education either. And they're saying, hey, Eddie, you know, you're making really good money. You need to go buy new trucks. You know, you need to spend money.
Yeah.
When you go buy new trucks, unless you increased the services that you're providing, you're essentially diminishing the return. So, you know, optimally, you want to be 30, 35%. 25% is a good solid number on your profit margins.
Right.
Like every dollar you turn, you're making 30%,
Yep.
25%. When you go buy new trucks, your insurance goes up, your license plates go up. It may make your employees happy, and don't get me wrong, you can't put a price on morale.
It's intangible.
You know, you've got to do that, but at the same time, you're reducing your profit margins. And I've almost expensed myself out of my own business because I took that advice. What I would do today is I would take that money that I'm making that I have a tax liability on, and I would invest it into another symbiotic stream of income that is somewhere else that I don't have to work for.
Right.
And eventually, I would probably make so much money from that because I've done that over the years, I may not even need this business anymore.
Right.
And I've maintained a really good, solid business over here that made a 30% profit margin.
Yep.
But over here, I'm making a 2x multiple
Yeah.
in every 3 to 5 years. And I multiplied my money.
It's fantastic.
Without me actually doing anything.
To just put that in the simplest terms, that was such fantastic advice. One, protect your margins, right?
Right.
Don't start
100%.
spending more money just because you're making more money. People do that in their personal lives as well, by the way.
100%.
Right. And then your goal with your first business when you're starting to make really good money is, how do I take the money I'm making and replicate the same amount of money without this business?
Right.
Meaning,
And-
if this business went away tomorrow, how would my other streams that I've invested in make the same money?
Right. And let's be honest, full preface here is it's probably not the first business.
Sure.
It's the first business that makes a profit margin.
Yeah.
And when you hit that one, you know, then start, you know, divesting in the other things and doing other things. Because let's be honest, you only have so much time.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be a guy, I mean, I'm not going to lie, probably the last 15 plus years, I'm on average 90 to 100 hour a week guy. Like I work 18, 19 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like I grind. But I had to do that because of the mistakes I made when I was younger.
Sure.
You know, and I enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't need to work so hard if I would have had other money coming in that I wasn't investing my time to make that other money.
Agreed. And it's the simplest way to answer the question, do you have a business or do you have a job?
100%.
If I could walk away from this business and still make enough money from the investments that I've made with the money from this business and still live the life that I want to live, well, then I truly have a business. If I walk away from this business and now I have to go get a job to support my lifestyle, well, I didn't really have a business in the first place. I had a job that I created for myself. It's the simplest way to answer that question.
So I think to really tie this off and put a bow on it would be, on my younger days, I thought that I got paid to think. Or, I'm sorry, I got paid to do. That I was trading hours for dollars. You'll never make enough money doing that.
Yeah.
Today, I try to write systems and processes that make me liquid.
Yeah.
To where all I do is fly around, meet partners, do podcasts, do these things. I get paid to think.
Yeah.
And I think through problems. Somebody calls me up, I'm thinking through it. I'm not doing through it, I'm thinking through it.
Yeah. Really, really, really great advice. Seriously. I want to be respectful of time.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they do want to connect with you?
Man, you know, for multiple years, I've been doing this thing that was a little different, kind of like a beta test. So you can actually go on Google.
Okay.
And you can type in hashtag Eddie Austin, EDDIE AUSTIN BEX.
Okay.
So Eddie Austin BEX, and it will pull up all of my social media, everything I'm involved in, post, you know, and I even did the same thing. So a little hack for capital raising. So if you're raising capital for something, every post you do, if you want that to kind of be like an infinite, take hashtag
Take a note of this.
and then invest and your name. So even to this day, somebody could look up hashtag invest with Eddie Austin, and my posts still come up today.
That's really good advice.
No, that's massive. when I first talked to Eddie and got off the phone, I did that, and he was like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like just Google me on this, and I did that, pulled it all up,
Yeah.
because I've never heard that. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of thousands of people over my career
Yeah.
because I was introduced. I was introduced to Eddie through Mark Allen.
Yeah.
Friend of mine and friend of the show, and we did the same. I did the same thing. I'm like, oh yeah. We pulled everything up. So
perfect sense.
So go Google that hashtag Eddie Austin BEX. Last, before we end because I want to do the personal development stuff. Like,
please.
You're talking about you have a goal to live to be 120.
Yep.
Right. What does that lifestyle regiment look like, and what are you doing?
So first, I want to bring it into focus by saying I did a pretty good video. There's other videos out there that's called the Life Ribbon, and that Life Ribbon is basically the life expectancy from birth till you're expected by searchability on Google, probably 80 years old. So if you take that life ribbon and it's this long, and you probably didn't learn a whole lot from here to 20, so you cut that off, and then say it's originally 100 years long, and then you cut this piece off, you're down to about this much.
Yeah.
The only option you have is to extend the back end, like make the ribbon longer. You got to stretch it out. And to do that, it's biohacking, it's foods you eat, not to get into it, but the commercial foods today, they're not good for you.
Man,
so
we do a whole other podcast.
my wife and I are both vegan.
Okay.
And, usually we're all vegan.
Wow.
Nothing heated up over 135, 150 degrees, and because you're cooking the minerals out. So, and it's daily health. The mind is the most important thing in the body. I'm trying to learn how to use 50 to 60% of the mind capacity. So I'm doing the things that feed to it. Like the other day, I did a 50-hour fast.
Wow.
And I'll be completely honest, I only lost 1 pound during 50 hours. And I was kind of blown away by that.
Yeah.
And then during that, it was just water. No coffee, nothing else, just water. And when I would start to get a headache, I would take apple cider vinegar and just do a teaspoon. And I would get those minerals back in my body, and my headache would go away.
Wow.
But I'm going to be honest, if you've never done it before, the mental clarity, because I was in the middle, it was the worst time ever to do a 50-hour fast. Like, I had so many important meetings. I am so happy I did, because my mental clarity, when I went back and listened to some of the recordings and stuff, I was spot on.
Wow.
Like every word, every pause, like it was the perfect speech.
Wow.
And I was like, this is insane. But it was because I had not put any foods in my body that altered my human state. Because I didn't eat something that makes me feel tired.
Right.
I didn't eat something that gives me brain fog.
Yep.
Like, I didn't drink something that makes me feel different. I was just pure the best of my ability. So I think what it did was it leaned in on all my good practices, exercising every day. Like, I walk or run a mile a day. It's 365 miles a year.
Yeah.
Like, I talked to some of my marathon buddies, and they're like, I did a 20-mile marathon. That's cool. He runs like 100 miles in a year.
Yeah.
I did 365 miles this year.
Consistency.
It's just consistency. It's
Yeah.
1% better, right? So that's what I would say is, it's not the perfect diet. It's not the perfect workout regimen. It's doing a bunch of small things well over a long period of time, and it compounds.
Yeah. Love that. When you talk about mindfulness, what does your daily mindfulness sort of practice look like? Does that involve meditation, things like that?
Man, happy to get into that. I'm a Christian, and the first thing I do is I wake up and I say thank you for one more day. Just one more day. That's all I need is just one more day. And that's number one, is starting with that reflection. And then I usually read or listen to at least one page of the Bible. And at that point, I hit my knees, I pray. And then, also it's good to understand your destination. So many people, they say, or I ask them the question, where are you going to be in 5 years? They don't know the answer to it. And it's mind-blowing, because your life's short. So for me, I write down like a list of 100 every year of goals, where I'm going to be, where I'm going, all these things. And then you kind of need to meditate on that. What's it feel like when you make this goal happen? So there's a little bit of meditation.
Yeah.
And then I post on social media at least once a day, sometimes 3 times a day, doing some copywriting, talking about life, talking about business and stuff like that. So I need that mental clarity. So as soon as the sun's coming up, Like, I like to count my wins. So I get up before the sun every single day and I make my bed. Those are two things that I've done. I've accomplished that. So I'm starting by stacking small wins. And then I get out here and I'm, the morning sun or the morning rain or whatever it is hitting me in the face. And I'm getting that mental clarity, getting grounded.
Yep.
And then the things that you can think about during that time, you can start to put that out in social media. You can put it out in the real world. Because I think the last lecture, mindset, is a really good one to think about. How do you want to be remembered? And at that point, you can really manifest every single day to take every little step.
Yeah. I love that, man. That is.
And then, of course, it's hitting the gym.
Obviously.
And then, taking care of the family, like staying good mentally, healthily.
Yep.
Not letting people get in your life that have a bad mindset.
Big part of it.
Don't let people walk through your clean mind with dirty feet. Just don't let them do it.
So true, man. That part right there, especially. If take anything away from this episode, go listen to the last 5 minutes again. That's really, really, really fantastic, actionable advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's been the thing that I had to change. And, a couple years ago was a big time in my life, big pivotal moment. And that pivotal moment come down to letting go of everything. I evaluated everything I did in life. And I found that so many things I was chasing was for the money. And that pivotal moment was letting go of all the pride and ego that was inside of me and just focusing on just being the best human being.
Yeah.
And just being more like God, right? Just being the best testament.
Yeah. It's amazing when you can recognize those things and let them go, how your world opens up.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it was a life changer.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
I'm going to tell you this is, look, as you're listening to this, it wasn't about getting more doors, but if you really dig into it, the whole formula on how to actually get it and acquire it,
right,
and how to achieve this. And so I hope this is massively valuable to our listeners, and they need to go back and re-listen to this because, Eddie's time's important. Your next stop is going to Florida, sounds like.
Yep.
Back home.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll be getting that sun.
Yeah.
And we truly appreciate you coming up here. It's always great having guests, in studio. So thank you so much for yours. And if this was valuable to you, please, in order for us to get more guests like this, and Mark Allen recommended to Eddie for us to connect. And then when I talked to Eddie, I was like, hey, we also have this podcast. Eddie was like, I'd love to join it. He listened to the show. Obviously, he didn't get turned off by the other episodes. So the way we attract more people like Eddie is by you leaving us reviews. Go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, go subscribe on YouTube, and that way we can attract amazing people like Eddie himself, and then share this out. I mean, I think that this is probably one of the most shareable episodes that we have. So go do that. Thank you again, Eddie, for coming in here.
Absolutely.
And we will see you.
Deep Blue RE Tour Studios, and Google hashtag Eddie EDDIE Austin BEX to check out and connect with Eddie.
Massive.
Thank you so much for coming, man. Episode 53 in the books.
Been an honor.
Appreciate it. Bye, guys.